All right, so this chapter records the military strength and success that followed God's covenant promise in the previous chapter. After receiving God's assurance that his throne would last forever, David begins to experience victory, expansion, and peace, signs that the Lord is with him. The first part of this chapter covers victories over the Philistines and Moab. David defeats the Philistines, taking Gath and surrounding towns, reclaiming long contested territory. He also defeats the Moabites, who become his subjects and pay tribute. Okay, these victories secure Israel's western and eastern borders. God is expanding David's influence on every side. The second part of the chapter covers victory over Hadadezer of Zobah. David strikes Hadadezer, king of Zobah, north of Damascus, as he goes to restore his control over the Euphrates region. David captures 1,000 chariots, 7,000 horsemen, and 20,000 foot soldiers. He cripples most of the chariot horses, a way of disabling future war use, not cruelty. The Arameans of Damascus come to help Hadadezer, but David defeats them too, killing 22,000. Okay, he places garrisons in Damascus, and the Arameans bring him tribute. David takes large amounts of bronze from Tebeth and Kun, which Solomon later uses to make the bronze basin pillars and utensils for the temple. Okay, you can check that one out in 2 Chronicles chapter 4 verses 11 to 12. Yeah. God's promise of dominion begins to unfold. David's borders now stretch near the Euphrates, just as God told Abraham. Okay, that is written in Genesis chapter 15, verse 18. Okay, the third part of the chapter covers tribute from Toi, king of Amath. Toi, king of Amath, hears of David's victory and sends his son Hadoram to congratulate him. He brings gold, silver, and bronze gifts. David dedicates all of it to the Lord, along with the plunder from every nation he conquered. Okay, Edom, Moab, and Ammon, Philistia, and Amalek. Okay, David recognizes every victory as God dedicating the wealth to his service. Okay, so let me say this again. David recognizes every victory as God's, dedicating the wealth to his service. This foreshadows the riches that will later fund the temple. Okay, the fourth part of this chapter covers victory over Edom. Abishai, which is David's general and Joab's brother, he defeats 18,000 Edomites in the Valley of Salt. David sets up garrisons in Edom, and all the Edomites become his subjects. The Lord gave David victory everywhere we went. This phrase repeats throughout the chapter, a sign that God's presence guarantees success, not military might alone. Okay, and David's the fifth part of the chapter covers David's administration. Okay, so the chapter closes by listing officials, showing that his kingdom is now orderly and established. Okay, so let's see here this tab, and where we can see like each role, the name, and the function. Okay, real quick. All right. There we go. Here we have the role: kings, army commander, recorder, secretary, priests, royal secretary, commander of Kethites and Pelethites, and chief officials. Okay, so who is in charge of that one? Okay, so we got the names here. Okay, and the function: rules of justice and righteousness, leads the military. Chronicles royal affairs, oversee temple service administration duties, leads royal guards. Pretty cool, right? All right. So David's reign is now strong, organized, and blessed, a reflection of God's faithfulness to his promise in chapter 17. Okay, And what are the key lessons from this chapter? In 1 Chronicles chapter 18, the first lesson is victory comes from God's presence. The text repeats it. The Lord gave David victory wherever he went. Second lesson, honor God with every gain. David dedicates all spoils to the Lord. Prosperity is meant to serve God's purpose. Third lesson, order follows obedience. Once David aligns with God's will, his kingdom becomes strong, structured, and peaceful. Final lesson, God keeps his word. The victories and peace prove that God is fulfilling the covenant promise made just one chapter earlier, okay? So in summary, in 1 Chronicles chapter 18, David's reign flourishes with victories over surrounding nations, Philistia, Moab, Aram, Edom, and others. He dedicates all plunder to God, okay? Expands Israel's territory and establishes as just administration, okay? Every success confirms one truth. The Lord gave David victory wherever he went.